Brain science, faith, and addiction. That's not three words you often see in the same sentence, but that's what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about how we can integrate our understanding of brain science and faith, the Christian faith, and what the Bible has to say. Many people think that the Bible is silent on things like addiction, and it's not. And then putting that together with addiction and seeing what kind of model we get. I have my whiteboard here. I want to draw a few things for you and give you an overview of what this looks like. So let's start with choice. Everybody has a choice. Everybody has choices in life. Now then, we look at some people and we see that, wow, they seem to always make bad choices. And we might have another person that we would describe as, man, it seems like every choice they make is a good choice. We all have the ability to choose, but for some of us, it's a little harder to make good choices. For others, it's very easy. What causes that? Well, it starts out with a choice is always influenced by other things. We have these pressures and stresses that go against our choices. And when we make these choices, it can be harder because of these pressures coming into us. So, for example, biology. You see, we have genetic vulnerabilities. We have things in our lives that we were born with that we're better at, that we're worse at, that we're weaker at, that we're stronger at, and that can affect some of our choices. We have certain appetites. I like certain foods. I don't like certain other foods. But it goes way more than just food. I have certain things that I am attracted to, and not all those things are going to be good. In fact, the Bible would describe those as a sin appetite. You see, I might have a propensity towards lying, where it's just kind of natural. I'm drawn towards it. Now, that doesn't mean that I have no choice, but it means that it's going to be more natural for me, biologically much more natural for me to go ahead and move in the direction of, well, cheating or lying or stealing, whatever it happens to be. So all of these things are biological. We even have in utero exposure to things sometimes, things that get introduced into our biology, into our personhood, not by any choice of our own, but by just whatever our mother is doing and whatever's going around outside of us. But we have more than just biology. We know that. We also have environment. The big E. And this environment can be big. You know that. We've said it before. We've seen it on TV shows. We're like, oh man, that kid had no prayer. He had no hope because of the bad environment he grew up in. And sometimes that bad environment is something like gangs that he chose to get in. Sometimes he was just born in the wrong family and had a lot of negative environmental pressures that way. Definitely family can be one of those. It also could be just accidental exposure. Things that cause post-traumatic stress. All sorts of things like that happen to us environmentally. They make a good choice harder. We also have the big T, trauma. When we have traumas happen, like physical abuse, sexual abuse, physical injuries, accidents, psychological problems, injuries from war, all these sorts of things, these traumas to our bodies, traumas to our emotional state, they all affect our ability to make good choices. And you can see we're starting to add up something. You can add in some other fancy things like mismatched instincts and supernormal stimuli. We'll talk about that another time. But you can have, generally speaking, you can have lots of different varieties of stresses. And these stresses make good choices harder for some people. So when we say naively, oh, well, he just chose that, especially if we're talking about addiction, there's an element where that's true. Maybe back at the beginning, they may be way past choosing now, but they may have started with a choice. But that doesn't mean it was an easy choice. Sometimes doing what's right, doing what's best for you, what's healthiest for you, can be, as you can see, extremely hard to do. Ultimately, that is why choice can be used as almost like a battering ram or a beat stick. You can use that and hammer somebody with it, but we better be careful because we haven't walked in their shoes. We don't know how hard a good choice was for them to make. So let's say a person now has made a bad choice, a self-destructive choice. Well, the Bible would call that choice a sin. Some people might not be comfortable with that term, but I'm trying to reconcile faith with the brain science. So understand that I'm going to just leave that word sin up there because that's what the Bible would most be comfortable with calling it. And so when we have sin come into our life, or a bad choice, a self-destructive moment, it tends to go one of two directions. It tends to drift in the direction of feeling forgiveness and grace, which, by the way, helps us forgive ourselves as well. But we head in that direction, or we tend to head in the direction of shame and guilt. Now, right here, faith has a tremendous thing to say, doesn't it? You see, faith of a certain kind might lead us to more shame and guilt. Now, I would call that toxic faith. I would say that's the bad version of faith. If your faith practice, if your church's teachings are heading you towards shame and guilt all the time, then that's not going to be healthy for you. If it's heading you towards grace and forgiveness and an opportunity to just walk away and make a new, clearer choice, then that's a good thing. I should have put this in green and this in red, but I'm not doing that because I don't have my red pen with me. But here's what happens next. Let's move from this picture, which of course Christianity and the Bible has a ton to say about this, and brain science might call it just an extension of choice. But let's bring back our science a little bit and see how this affects us. Because when we get to the next level, we have dopamine. And dopamine is intended to be something that our body produces naturally in little tiny bursts. And when it produces it, it causes us to be reinforced with whatever that behavior was that we did. It's a reward. And we were made to produce little bits of dopamine, but not giant wads of it for long periods of time over and over again. So we can become, when we do that, dopamine addicted, where we're craving larger and larger amounts of that. Now, believe it or not, you would think, well, dopamine addiction, that certainly couldn't be something described in the Bible, but it is. This is what the Bible would call a sin dependence. Or actually, if you were to look in the book of Romans in the Bible, it might describe it as being given over to a seared conscience, where they describe it in the Bible as once it's been seared, it's as if your choice begins to go away. Your ability to say no to this negative thing appears to be eroding. And we see this in the brain science of dopamine addiction. Now then, here's the interesting thing. When this choice that's led to the negative, self-destructive behavior that's led to the dopamine, when that involves a drug, something else can happen. It can create a brain disease. Now, then I have to tell you, when I write this word brain disease, for most of us, including me, really what I'm thinking of is it's an injury. If you go watch videos of the really smart medical doctors and what they would say it's a brain disease because it meets the medical definition of what a disease is. But to me, when I hear that definition and I hear medical doctors talk about it, I'm thinking, oh, you're describing an injury. So imagine your leg is broken. That's an injury. Well, we know that all the parts of our body, inside and out, can be damaged. The brain can be damaged as well. And we've got an addiction starting here. We've got an addiction starting. And this addiction can, over time, remove our ability to make as easy a decision because now we have even more coming against a good choice. But when the drugs are involved, the chemical factory of our brain gets messed up. And this brain disease or this brain injury removes choice. Our choices are removed from us. This is a horrible and powerful thing that happens for us. Here's what happens. We have several different parts of our brain. And one part of our brain is the part of our brain that makes moral values and decisions. The part that makes choices all the time, every day. But if you've had this brain injury, there's another part of our brain, the midbrain, it's called, that it is the part that helps us stay alive. It's that old primal part of our brain that keeps us alive. It's concerned with just a few things. It's concerned with safety and security and food and sex. It's just basic survival. It's what it's there for. And what happens in this disease is down in this low part of our brain where we have the need for food. And you know, if you get hungry enough, you'll do anything. There's no more choice. There's no sense of morality. You just have to get food. Well, you need safety, which could be shelter. But if you're unsafe, you'll end up doing anything to become safe. And we have to reproduce. But imagine, if you will, for a person who has become addicted to some drug of choice, be it alcohol, heroin, whatever, and it has injured their brain. And now drugs gets on the list for our midbrain. It gets on the list of primal survival things that we must have or we're going to die. And we have to have it now. Imagine if the need to take a drug for you was so strong that it would be equal to you were starving for food. And I don't mean getting hungry because you skipped lunch. I'm talking about it's been a week since you've eaten. And you are literally starving. And you're looking at the dirt thinking, I wonder how that dirt would taste. Really starving. That's what a brain-injured addict can feel. That drugs, and I wrote it at the bottom of the list, but let me tell you, the experiences of drug addicts will tell you that it's not even at the bottom of this list. It really belongs at the top of the list. So you see, drugs becomes super important to that person. And the idea of a choice, whether it's got a bunch of stressors at it, that's gone. There is no more of that. And we're down to just surviving and needing drugs to survive. The amazing thing to me is that in that state, some people are able to find a way, enough clear-headed moments, enough courage to seek help. And man, if someone in that kind of situation seeks help, we should take them seriously, give them the best possible treatment they can make. The great news is even if you find yourself way over here, you can get help. You guys know that the brain is miraculous at healing itself, right? Better than almost any other part of our body, but it also heals slowly. So we can do things to help the brain cure itself and heal itself and get rid of this horrible trap. And now once we do that, then we can move back over here and start helping clients with these pressures that affect choice so that they can begin to actually make good choices, positive, healthy choices for themselves for the rest of their lives. They can, in essence, be cured of their brain injury. But it takes time. It's not going to be 10 days. It's not going to be a couple of weeks in some fancy clinic somewhere. It's probably not even going to be 30 days in your normal rehab center. It's going to take a while. But it can happen. There is hope, and you can get your choices back. Thanks for listening.